I'm opening. We have an eye, sort of a nostril, 2 teeth. One of the teeth has a small cavity. Close call, folks, but I think we got here just in time.
Presented by Maria Menounos and Kevin Undergaro. This is Anatomy of a Movie. In-depth discussions and breakdowns of various movie titles. And now that you've seen the movie, let the dissection begin.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Anatomy of a Movie. Today we are doing one of the first horror films released in October 2014, Annabelle, directed by John R. Leonetti. I'm your host, Marisa Serafini, and with me today I have...
Hey movie fans, it's Demetri. Panos, how are you?
Good.
So excited to talk horror in October.
I think you're more excited than I am because I don't do horror, but
I know,
we are
and
here.
We saw this movie together,
We
so
did.
I know.
And you know what? This is the first time we have seen a film that we had to dissect together.
Yes.
Quite a fun experience. Probably more fun on your end, just
really
watching
was.
my reactions.
Yes. As Eli Roth, famed horror director, coined this thing. He's called it chick vision. Where
It is.
Watching
do
horror
the
movies through their
fingers?
fingers. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, it was so funny to watch you react, not react, try not to react.
That was me probably 75% of this film. Every time they weren't talking, that was me just watching, trying to watch at least.
Good times.
But overall, what were your first initial impressions of this film?
You know, I'm a big fan of The Conjuring. Huge fan of The Conjuring, where Annabelle was brought up and actually ended up playing a key part of that movie. So whenever you're going to put out a movie and you're going to say, you know, before The Conjuring, you know, you have a lot to live up to. I don't necessarily think that Annabelle lived up to The Conjuring, yet at the same time, it didn't make me angry. It had enough of creepy moments, and there were some good creeps, and even like a good jump here and there. It just wasn't the tightly ratcheted roller coaster ride that I was hoping for. I actually thought, watching the movie, I wanted more scares to come out of this movie.
I thought there was enough scares in it. I personally am not a horror fan.
Right.
These aren't the type of films I rush to the movie theaters to go to. I would rather take a Disney film over horror.
Sure.
But,
nothing wrong with that.
But every once in a while, I do fairly enjoy the horror and the suspense, and I was like, okay, yes, I've seen it.
I survived.
I'm still here.
And I liken this to a beginner horror movie. Like if you're not into horror movies all that much, Annabelle is sort of kind of safe.
Start with this one.
You can start with this one because there are far scarier movies, you know, in the whole realm of horror movies. This one did okay.
And this is a prequel, so this would be a good one to start off with, being the beginning of a story.
Yeah, the beginning of a story,
beginning
and how
of a
the
trilogy
Annabelle
per
doll
se
comes back. And there's some cool trivia we have about Annabelle the doll and how it ends up relating to The Conjuring. You know, you had said something like, I will go to a horror movie if, or whatever. And I'm going to tie this into James Wan because I was at Lionsgate and I was there for the release of Saw. And we learned something that after I say it, you're going to go, duh. But trust me, at the time, 10 years ago when Saw was released...
It's been 10 years already.
It's been 10 years. Saw celebrates its 10th anniversary. That Saw doll is 10 years old this month, in just a couple of weeks, in fact. One thing that was learned is that, you know, horror has its fans. And at the same time...
Cult following, definitely.
I would even say, like, even bigger than cult following. I mean, it has its fans, and they are rabid for good horror movies. I'm in that crowd. But it also has its people who are not fans. There are as many people who like horror, there is many, if not, I would say maybe even sometimes more, that don't like horror movies. However, in the month of October... The month of October is the one time where even non-horror fans will be subjected to being scared.
Me being one of them.
And going to a horror movie. Like, they get into the spirit of things, so to speak.
Yeah.
No pun intended. And we learned that on the release of Saw. Like, we released it on Halloween weekend, which in fact, this 10 years matches up Saw was released on October 31st on a Friday, 10 years ago this year. So they weren't really like, and again, that's a big duh. You would think it's a no-brainer, but there was a long spate of time when people in studios were not releasing horror movies on or around Halloween. And
why do you think that is? Do you think it's because it is a national holiday in that way that people wouldn't go flock to the films?
Yeah.
You think it would actually help them?
Actually, well, you would think so. But what happened was like back in the 80s and such, with movies like Halloween, Halloween 2, Halloween 3, they were being released on and around Halloween. But then horror, like every genre, most every genre, it's cyclical. And they just sort of kind of felt that Halloween, people were more prone to go to a party, to a costume event, to go out to a social event, rather than make that social event going to a movie.
Well, yeah, if you think about it, because you go to a movie, you sit down and don't talk to people for 2 hours.
Right.
Rather than going to a party where you would.
But what marketing and distribution ended up doing for Saw is we made going to the movies the Halloween event. Go to the Halloween event. And then everybody else started to follow suit. More horror movies started to be released in October. And when I used to go out and do presentations, when I was up to Saw 5, 6, 7, you know, my
They've had that many movies.
Oh yeah, and I'd be, if it's Halloween, you know, we're gonna put out a Saw movie. Like, it's just, the audiences became conditioned, and I think after a while, maybe a little bit burnt out. However, we're talking about Annabelle, and again, you're releasing it in October. There really hasn't been
early October. Do you think that would help with the building up the audience for this, because they had the whole month of October to enjoy it?
Yeah, I think what they're looking at too is, yes, I think what they're looking at is later on down the line in October, there's, well, number one, I believe Lionsgate is re-releasing Saw on Halloween. I don't know how a re-release will do, but I think the week before is a movie that we saw a trailer to called Ouija. And so, you know, I think they picked their time where there wasn't really a horror movie. There was more adult fare, maybe even some kids movies out there. So let's hit them early in October. Let's get people excited for horror. Let's market
people
this
get
really
in the
well.
mood for Halloween.
Yeah, we're gonna get in the mood for a horror movie. This is a prequel to The Conjuring, which we're gonna market that to craziness. So I think they picked a good date, because maybe later on down the line might not have done as well as it did. And let's talk about this. This movie cost $6.5 million.
Which I was amazed at. A lot of horror films, for the most part, majority-wise, that it's usually very low budget, but because the cinematography really adds to it, because if you have simple cinematography, I mean, Paranormal Activity being a perfect example, that movie was shot for pennies but made millions of dollars off of it. You can make simple horror films for a less amount, but still garners so much money. Right.
And this movie, again, for $6.5 million, comes in at the box office $37.1 million. Now, JT and I had a conversation last week about box office gross, and I believe that Annabelle could beat out Gone Girl, because it's a horror movie. You're going to get a younger audience.
But you really actually didn't. Gone Girl still
was
beat
number
them out,
one,
but not by much.
Not by much. We're talking $400,000.
Yeah,
difference.
less than $1 million difference.
So yeah, and JT was telling me Gone Girl's gonna kill Annabelle. It's gonna flop, right, JT?
He's eating crow right now.
And we're looking at a disparity though. Like, this is, again, when you market a horror movie, you know, and you can deliver some chills. It's Cinema Score said it was a B, which is the same exact Cinema Score for Gone Girl. So the audiences generally liked it. And
even on IMDb it's a 6.1, which isn't too bad for a horror film.
Look, the movie has made $37.1 million. $45 million, that was opening weekend. $45 million total gross around today. And
today being October 10th.
October 10th.
2014.
And then worldwide box office is somewhere around $47 million.
So it started off really well being the first horror film coming out in this time of the year, and it had a strong following. Do you think it will last, or do you think it will kind of plateau throughout the rest of October?
It could. I mean, with such a big opening, I think that it'll take the typical, genre type drop, which I'm saying it could drop about 60+%.
Right.
It is going up against competition, but they don't right now. If it stays until a movie like Ouija comes out, they're happy. I mean, when you're talking about making $45 million to date for a movie that cost them production wise $6.5 million, that's crazy.
And also if you think about Ouija, is what seems from the premise, it seems like it's surrounded by teenagers. It's very teenager, young adult driven. Yeah, very young adult driven. So I feel like the younger demographic in that way, that the 18-year-olds, teenagers, 20s, early 30 people will probably see that film more.
Yeah, I think so. And with
one.
Annabelle was an R-rated movie. And again, it really does speak to...
And you and I were even discussing at the end of this film, there really weren't any moments where we could handpick, say, this would make the film rated R.
I think, didn't we agree that maybe it was the beginning?
It was probably the beginning, because the
beginning
actual...
was creepy.
The actual breaking in of the daughter, Annabelle, and killing, that was a very surrealistic type of murder.
Yeah, and it was actually one of my favorite parts of the movie, because I thought it was so well done, because it wrapped it around, number one, it took place in the 70s. It took place during the time of Helter Skelter and Charles Manson. And that was the wraparound. So this whole thing about a cult was introduced early on in the movie, and then we're also introduced to this older couple whose daughter went away to a cult. And it's the daughter who comes back, and the way that it was filmed from almost from a rear window perspective, like we're across the street and we see the B&E taking place, and then we see very violently these parents, like there's a lot of blood splatter and whatnot. Sets up a very creepy tone, and then there's the home invasion of our main characters. So I thought it was creepy.
This was definitely that moment was definitely the first scary moments in the film, and there was the cheap trick of adding an audio boom sound drop when all we did was see something but hear it at the same time. There was no dialogue during that, and that's what really just started off. We're gonna see some blood, we're gonna see killings that we don't know who started it, who's doing it, and I think this moment was okay. It really set the suspense level.
Yeah, it set the tone for sure. I wish that there was more. I wish there was heavier, but I think that was the bloodiest part. The opening scene, the house invasions, the both of them, because
bloody, most violent.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
we also see Annabelle and the human Annabelle and her boyfriend break into
our protagonist's
house. John and Mia's house. And actually, this is probably, again, the only scene that would make this film rated R. There's actually stabbings.
Yeah, I mean, the pregnant wife was stabbed in the stomach.
Yes, Mia was stabbed.
Mia was stabbed, and that's pretty heavy, and she gets stabbed, and then the Annabelle in human form goes into I like your dolls, and she, I believe, slices her own throat, and her blood gets into the Annabelle doll. And they were doing this as some type of a cult ritualistic kind of a thing, but there was, as we learn, there's a demon involved, from which...
Always a demon.
Yeah, always a demon. So, and then we're off to tell the story about, the hijinks that Annabelle the doll creates for this couple, Mia and John.
Right, and this film was written, being a prequel to The Conjuring, but this film was written by Gary Dauberman, who... I was kind of trying to understand the whole cult aspect of it. We know that the daughter and the boyfriend were a part of this, but their whole meaning behind it is that they had to claim an innocent soul in order to have a demon return. Even though in the film, we did, not to jump too far ahead, but we did see the demon, the ram creature, in a physical corporeal form, which which made me question. I was like, okay, they have to sacrifice a soul to bring a demon back, even though the demon is phically there.
Yeah.
So this is where I was questioning,
and I was wondering too.
Aspect.
Yeah, and again, the way I just looked at that as we're talking about, to me, the second creepy scene which is the storage, the basement storage.
Basement,
scene.
of
Is that what
course.
we're
There's
talking about?
an obligatory basement scene, of course.
Yeah, and in which we see that demon sort of kind of, and I took that as a pure, flat out kind of a haunting, where it was a haunting, not necessarily he was like in a court, like the demon was not necessarily like real in our world, but more like a haunting, like.
But you knew it was there. The presence
you knew that
was
the
there.
presence was there. And I really like that scene, except for my one nitpick about this scene, as well as it was set up. And again, I do see a lot of horror movies, so I sort of kind of get, maybe I'm a little jaded at certain times, but in this, I call it the "you're going the wrong way" effect.
Yep.
So here we have this basement storage compartment, and Mia is going there to put something in there.
Like, first of all, you don't go into the basement alone at night in the dark, and then you go into a cage.
Lit.
Yeah, fairly well lit.
It was well lit.
All right.
But the second you
but then
see
you go
a
into
black...
a cage where you could easily get locked in, and no one's there to let you out if that happens.
But I'll be honest, up until so she comes downstairs, she goes into the cage. As soon as that black crib or carriage, baby
just,
carriage,
rolled out,
sort of kind of
seemingly
rolls
by
out,
itself.
and
Look more like Rosemary's
the Rosemary's
Baby.
Babies, which was an inspiration for this movie.
Yes, it was big inspiration.
And once you see that happening, you don't walk towards it. Like you feet don't fail me now. You get me there. I'm out of here. I am out of here.
But the fact that it was her carriage,
I don't remember it being that black.
It was a carriage.
It was a carriage.
She is a mother.
Yeah.
The nurturing side of her took effect. Those woman instincts in her. It was like, okay, she hears baby crying, she has to go tend to it.
And I say you're going the wrong way, and because
we all know she's going the wrong way.
Nothing good can come of this. But what was set up is her. All right, so she goes to the carriage, and then it's the running to the elevator, and the lights going off as she's passing each overhead light, and then doors closing. She presses the button, the doors open up again. She hasn't moved. And
she's still on the same level.
Yeah.
And I couldn't even count how many times she tried to reopen the door.
Two or three
it's like
times.
3 or 4 times, a good amount.
Yeah.
And then I think the thing that really killed me in the scene, just like it took me out of it for a moment, was when she saw that the elevator wasn't working and she's trying to look for another way out. There's a clear exit neon sign that just visually, it just ruined the moment for me. Only because the scene itself is so dark, so suspenseful.
Right.
And then to have such a simple shot as clear as exit, all right, you're supposed to leave here instead of the elevator, it threw me off.
Yeah, well, nobody ever said in horror movies that people play it smart either. So, that's another thing.
It was too simple.
I don't disagree. And I don't want to take away, to me it was one of the other creepier aspects of this movie where it delivered. And there was one other one I felt was creepy too. But again, it sort of kind of fell into that. Again, that's why I say this is a horror movie for beginners. Like, it has all these tropes and it has some cliche that as a seasoned horror movie goer, you're going to pick out somebody like you. Yes, you'll see the exit sign, but you are curdled up in your chair.
But don't run to the exit sign. You have from point A to point B and anywhere in between where this demon could get you.
Yeah. So, like I said, I still, I don't want to take too much away from that scene. I still think it was one of the creepier scenes in the movie. I wish there were more. I wish there was more setup. Again, I'll go back to The Conjuring, and JT and I were having a conversation about horror movies and what are some of my favorites within the past 10 years. It's a little bit tough to frighten me when it comes to horror movies these days. The Conjuring was one that really, I felt like I was on a roller coaster hanging on for dear life.
I've even seen The Conjuring, and I admit that movie was way too scary for me. I will never watch that movie again.
Yeah, I'm surprised your head didn't explode. I mean, it's a scary movie.
I'm surprised too. I'm still alive.
It's a scary movie. And again, when you're talking about The Conjuring, at least for me, you should strive to be you may not be as good, but strive to be. And there were hints that they were trying, but I think that's the Wan influence as well, because I understood that he came in and helped out his buddy Leonetti there, and he punched up some scenes to just punch up the jump factor.
Yeah, and of course we know James Wan directed
Insidious,
Saw,
Insidious 2,
Conjuring, and John Leonetti, who directed this one, was the producer for Conjuring and all those. They pretty much just flipped roles for this film.
Well, Peter Safran, Leonetti was the cinematographer for the Conjuring.
Yeah, that's right. But they worked together, and they had the same creative, collaborative minds, and it makes sense that they would take on the continuation of the story.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was actually quite pleased to see James Wan help his buddy out, because you and I were talking about this. It was actually difficult to find any type of source material where Leonetti was by himself. James Wan was with him in various interviews and video interviews. And I was like, hey, this guy's helping his friend out. I'm sure, Wan right now is I believe he's still working on. I don't think they've locked Fast and Furious 7. And we all know what's been going on with that. So that can't be easy on a director. So he's had a lot to juggle, but yet he took some time out to help promote Annabelle, which I think is really cool.
And it's great, just the promotional aspect, but for marketing aspects as well, because the audience know James Wan as more for the directing aspect, and they know John Leonetti for the cinematography aspect. So if James Wan could throw in good words here and there for the directing, absolutely, go for it. I don't mind it whatsoever.
And it legitimizes, in a sense, The Conjuring, and it helps bridge that gap more. When you have the guy that does The Conjuring, what happens sometimes is, somebody will originate something, and they'll do maybe a prequel or maybe a sequel, but a person who was heavily involved in that first project, sometimes he turns his back on that other project, which James Wan didn't do here. And I commend him for that. He comes back, and he did help his friend with the publicity push of Annabelle, but I think it helps. It gets those Conjuring fans.
And John Leonetti, he might be not really known for the directing aspect, but he did direct this one, and I think he did an amazing job, because he didn't even need storyboards for this film. He's a cinematographer. He knows visually how he wants a film executed.
And when you're talking about a $6 million budget, apparently it took 25 days to film this movie.
Which is not a lot.
It's not a lot of time.
And this film only had a few simple set locations.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's not like they were traveling the world.
And Leonetti did something else that's highly uncommon in today's day and age. He filmed this movie in sequence. And his reasoning being, okay, so number one, you didn't have a ton of cast in this movie.
No.
And, he wanted to develop the character arc, and he wanted to do it in a naturalistic way. So he's like, so they shot it from beginning to end so that our protagonists, as they're going along filming the movie and all these events are happening, he felt that it was a little bit more organic, that the fright, concern, the terror would come from our married couple. So I just found that to be a very interesting way. It doesn't happen these days. We always they always film movies in a puzzle-like format, and then your editor and director will all cobble it together. So I give them credit for the way that they shot this.
Yeah, and John, you mentioned some shots were filmed from the rear window, Alfred Hitchcock type of style. Sure. Leonetti even said that he planned it in his head like Hitchcock, very Hitchcock style. In an interview, he said, from scene 1 to scene 112, I popped it all out of my head, literally like Hitchcock. I cut it in my mind, being the cinematographer. And then he also adds, the product prior to shooting was a detailed shot list down to the angles, types of lenses he plans to use, literally from beginning to end. He had the technical aspects down rather than actually just like, okay, here we go. So he had it all planned in his head, which is amazing. And I feel that's a style not a lot of directors do.
No, not today. And he did take a sort of kind of a throwback, almost 70s approach to the filmmaking, in which he wanted the scares. He did he attempted to make the scares a little bit more organic. He wanted to bring an audience in and be more involved with character and whatnot. And to an extent, it sort of worked for me. There could have been, like, I find one of the things that I loved about The Conjuring is that I bought into the characters. If you buy into the characters, then you have sympathy and you empathize with them, so that when they're going through these horrific events, that's what makes you scared. Because are they going to come out? How are they going to come out of this? And they ratchet up the conflict. This movie, no offense to the actors, I just felt that the characters, not that I didn't care about them, they were fine, but there wasn't much color to them, I felt. And maybe
I felt for Mia, being that she was mostly constantly alone, especially when all this is happening.
Yeah,
because she has a very supportive husband. He's a night doctor at the hospital, and that was just another excuse to have Mia, the protagonist, alone by herself at night. And I didn't really feel for the husband because they didn't build him up. They kind of built Mia up, and she feels like she's going crazy, even though we know, we as the audience know she's not. But Mia was probably the only one I could get attached to.
I agree.
No one else.
And she was somewhat of a strong female protagonist, and again, like you bring up a really good point. You said that she was alone a lot. There's a scene in the movie where the husband says, okay, well, I just got this new job, or I'm getting this new job. To seal the deal, I got to fly up to Sacramento for a couple of days. And not
it makes her alone.
Yeah, but not once did they say, hey, I'll call my mother, or I'll call my father, or we'll get a nanny to come in. Like, that never came up in conversation. I'm like, don't you have family nearby that might be able to help Mia out with the baby and not leave her alone?
Right.
It just seemed sort of kind of weird.
Yeah, it felt like there were just too many easy situations to make her alone.
Yeah.
And to add the build-up and suspense and the fact that she, the protagonist, would have to deal with this demon alone.
Yeah. Yeah, and the creep factor with the doll, which a doll is, this doll is creepy.
The Annabelle doll itself, what surprised me was that we know, the audience members who, and for all the listeners who might not know, the actual doll is based on a Raggedy Ann doll.
Raggedy Ann doll.
But this film used a more porcelain Victorian doll instead.
Yeah, they and that was a conscious effort during The Conjuring. One of the main reasons being is they did not believe that I don't know who it is, whether it's Hasbro or Mattel. I don't know who owns the rights to Raggedy Ann, but they felt that they were more than likely not going to give up the rights to use a Raggedy Ann doll in a horror movie.
That's a so well-known type of doll.
Correct.
Even to today, I can understand just for the marketing purposes. You add horror to that, no one's going to want to buy the product.
Yeah, and again, it's such an innocent doll, which actually makes the creep factor, it amps it up like by 100. Because when you look at something that's so innocent as Raggedy Ann, and you place this in a horror situation like the opening of The Conjuring, I get that. So they went to this Victorian doll, which sort of kind of has its creep factor. And bringing it back, and then now, but we saw it, when you see it in The Conjuring, it appears as if the doll had been through the ringer a little bit. So we get to see the doll relatively brand spanking new. And we see it go through its duresses.
Absolutely. And another factor to maybe why they chose to change the look of the doll is that the Victorian dolls are more human-like. In appearance. Raggedy Ann is not. You can definitely tell that's a more cartoonish type of look to it, and the Victorian, they added more humanistic qualities to it, which would make it more real and more authentic to the suspense and all that.
Well, the name of the gentleman who crafted Annabelle, the Annabelle doll, is a North Carolina gentleman by the name of Tony Rosen, and he built her based on Juan's drawings. He made 3 different versions of the doll for this movie. So we first get our pristine version.
For The Conjuring? Because it started with Conjuring. But
for
then
Annabelle.
For Annabelle. Okay.
Yeah, because when we first are introduced to Annabelle, the doll, in Annabelle the movie, it's a valuable gift. It's all pristine. It's polished.
It's a collectible.
Right. Highly collectible, apparently. It's part of a series. And the stage 2 is after she started to become as a conduit for what we call it demonic. Then she's fully engaged, in which the third stage was she literally all hell breaks loose. And you got to remember too, she goes from pristine, she's thrown in the garbage, sort of dragged around, and then
she goes through
beaten
fires.
up. Yeah. So there's wear and tear in the doll, which only makes it creepier and creepier. So yeah,
dirtier and darker.
Yeah,
physically.
And they actually had on set, they had an Annabelle Wrangler. One of the prop guys, and it was a very creepy job, according to the producer. And though the doll was scary looking to begin with, he goes, note the resemblance to Betty Davis. And whatever happened to Baby Jane, she required daily primping from hair to makeup team to amp up the chill factor. And that's what they did. So could you imagine, like, you're the prop guy and you're the Annabelle Wrangler. Oh, okay.
Well, I agree, because the Annabelle doll, she's a character in and of herself.
Absolutely.
Despite the fact that she can't talk or move around physically on her own, it is an inanimate object. She's literally the pivotal, the point of this film. She's
Absolutely.
the main person.
Absolutely. And tell me if you agree with this. What I really appreciate, and they did it in The Conjuring, but they do it in this movie too, is the doll may be, okay, so in one scene we see the doll in a chair. The next scene, we see the doll flopped off on the floor, okay, or the head's turned a different way. What I think they smartly do is we don't see the motion happening, and I think it makes it creepier to not see. It doesn't give it the Chucky effect. Nothing against the original Child's Play,
no.
But when you see Chucky moving, so sometimes it's sort of hard not to laugh.
It adds a humorous effect to it.
Yes, because it's a doll that's walking, whatever, even with a knife. But with Annabelle, just the mere fact that even if its head's tilted a certain way and the way that the camera is on the face, it looks demonic, even though it's not meant to. And that's supposed to be the juxtaposition. That's the word I'm looking for. Mm-hmm. Thank you. You have, as James Wan says, you have something that's beautiful and eerily creepy at the same time. And it's a little bit taller than your typical Raggedy Ann.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, we were watching the film together, and then when Mia put the doll on the shelf, and she says the line, there, it fits, it's perfect. I'm like, no, it's not. No, it's not. Yeah. It does not fit perfectly there. And the fact that even the first time we saw the doll and she puts it on the shelf, and we saw the two other dolls just like it, right. I had in my head, I was like, oh no, are they going to do a whole series of all these dolls? I hope not.
Annabelle, Lucy.
Annabelle and the two mysterious.
Annabelle and the Pips.
The other girls part of this collection. Yeah. Where did they go?
Yeah, where did they go?
Where did they go?
They I think, I don't know where they went. It was just creepy that Annabelle comes back. You know,
yeah, Annabelle's the only one that survived everything.
Right. Now, and it's really creepy too. The real Annabelle doll. Right now, the Warrens who were the main...
Ed and Lorraine Warren. They were some of our main characters within The Conjuring. Okay. And it comes from... And Annabelle comes from their case file. And, the doll, when they were in the 70s, 1970, when they were studying this and figuring this all out, I mean, the people who had the doll, they were like finding notes around their house that said like, help us, help me,
very, very, and it allegedly attacked someone, whether the husband or something. So, and the Warrens, like, and again, it was so built up in The Conjuring that like the doll has its own case. And even though the doll itself has been exorcised,
mm-hmm. and blessed twice a month.
Yeah, it still remains in the case with the big words, do not take out of the glass. It is not to come out of this case. So,
and that doll currently resides at the Occult Museum in Monroe, Connecticut.
Yeah, so, there's an East Coast connection there. Yeah. And again, I was hoping that the movie was going to live up to more of that. Like, if you build up a doll that's going to be that creepy and cause that much mayhem and horror, I wanted that horror in this movie. Not that it didn't make me jump.
Well, the thing is, in The Conjuring, we know at the end of that film, that the doll is completely gone. We don't know where it is. The audience knows that it can move on its own. But now, every time we see it move in Annabelle, we know the location and where it went. But now in The Conjuring, we don't know where it went, which added another level of suspense.
But at the very end, didn't Annabelle end up back in the box? Because Annabelle left the box to torment the daughter. Because there were multiple things going on in The Conjuring.
There was simultaneous
We had
stories
things going on at the farmhouse. We had things going on at the Warrens' house. And it was trying to get to the daughter. But I thought at the very end, Annabelle was back in her case. She left the case to torment the daughter and the grandmother, I thought. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. But I'm all sure that at the last shot...
Yeah, at the end, there was the close-up of it. But it did move.
Yeah. So, and listen, when you have that to play with, I'm expecting those type of like thrills and scares. And Leonetti, listen, for the budget that he had, for how he filmed it, like this movie could have been a hell of a lot worse. I guess I was just hoping hell of a lot better.
I think the filming was actually very good, especially when it came to the shots of the dolls, how long each shot was on, how it would pan up slowly or zoom in slowly.
Right.
It really got the audience. They couldn't look at anything else other than the doll that was staring back at them.
And how can you
it's
not?
Creepy.
Like, yeah.
There's no way to avoid this doll.
No. And again, I really do like the fact that we don't see the doll in motion.
Move on its own.
I think it's scarier to see the doll leave the room, come back, and the doll's on the floor. It's like, how did that happen? There was no wind or anything. Or
the head turned.
Yeah. So to me, that's creepier.
Contoured ways that a body shouldn't be placed in.
Absolutely, that a doll can. And a doll doesn't blink. A doll just stares. And Leonetti had talked about that. He goes, this doll has personality without it having personality. Like you inference the horror and the creepiness of it just because it's soulless on the inside. It's hollow. And
it's hollow.
Yeah.
It allows for something to get inside.
Sure.
Also, because it is an animated object, but they added a lot of human elements to it to add to the suspense. Yeah. Even we had the rocking of the chair. Mm-hmm. A human would need to move that. Right. We had the playing of the record machine. Yep. A human would need to do that.
Sure.
Like a lot of just human references that a human would usually do.
Yeah, and let us not forget,
not
too,
at all.
What's great about the rocking chair is not only is it a visible, but it's an audio cue of the creepiness because it's silent
even
house.
That's still creepy on its own.
Yeah, it's creepy. It's both, and like you don't even have to, like you could be behind a closed door and you hear the creaking of the rocking chair. That's just creepy. And when you open the door up, it could stop, but the doll's still there. Yeah,
Yeah.
That's what makes a sort of kind of a ghost story.
And the baby toy with the music playing by itself. Mm-hmm. Again, a lot of human items that were in the works that a doll couldn't do by itself.
Absolutely.
You mentioned door, probably one of the creepiest, scariest shots, but very well done, I think, in this film, was when we see the little girl.
The little girl, yeah, that was the other one that I was going to talk about.
Runs through the door. But it's not the door. When the door opens, it's not the little girl.
It's the adult Annabelle.
Good job on editing.
Yeah.
Very well executed. Scared the crap out of me.
And I think, without knowing, because they never said which scene James Wan came in to help, that seems like a very James Wan kind of camera trickery. James Wan, through his horror, he's great with fooling an audience and doing great things with the camera and editing. And this one almost seemed to be in camera. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have the little girl. She comes running towards the door. As the door's about to shut, it covers up the little girl, but then boom, the door opens up. So it's like, let's pull the girl off to the side. We get the other one ready to run through. It almost seems like a great in-camera effect. And it works.
I love it. I believe JTE actually has a word about
Quick question. I haven't seen the movie, but that was in the trailer. I'm curious, did you guys see that in the trailer? Did that affect it?
I try to avoid the Annabelle trailer promotions at all costs.
Okay.
Knowing that I would eventually have to see this film again. I'm not the biggest horror fan, so I didn't really
so it wasn't ruined for you.
No, but I'll answer the question. You're totally right. It was in the trailer. it plays out a little bit longer in the movie because like the little girl, the build up to it, like once you see the little girl, like it's just like in the trailer for The Conjuring. Okay, they did the great sound device of the clap, and that was in a trailer, and you knew how it ended, but when it came to the movie, it still scared the fuck out of me. Okay, so even with this scene, now I'm not saying that this had the same effect, but it did play out longer. You saw the little girl and you're like going, and she just like sort of kind of walks into that frame, and it was the way that which it was filmed, which I love, because it's that open door, it's a swinging door, and the girl's just standing there. And she comes out of nowhere, and you're like, oh, okay, this isn't good. And then when she starts going, and she starts running towards the door as it's closing, and then when you hear boom, and that door opens up, and it's the big girl going, and you're like, great horror. If it's an in-camera effect, it was done to a plumb. And I'm gonna guess, if I were a betting man, I'd put my money down that may have been the scene that James Wan filmed. I don't know for sure, but it seemed very much like his style to do.
And it would be a very easy shot to pull off because it just reminds me of the particular scene in Wizard of Oz. Yeah. When it goes from black to sepia color to color, we have the stand-in opening the door, and then we have actual Judy Garland, Dorothy walking through. It was two people in the same shot. Right. It's very much to the same effect that they could have easily pulled off in this film.
And I'm glad you mentioned that because, JT, there was another scene that I think you may have appreciated too, in which, and again, it happened early on in the movie. I remember where they had the baby in the crib, and it was sort of dark. Not a lot of lights were on in the house, and all of a sudden you saw like the ring thing, like the girl with the long hair, and you see her in the background walking by the crib.
The old Annabelle,
right? The old Annabelle. She just goes walking by the crib, and then she's in the foreground walking like right in front of us. And again, another creep moment that looks like an in-camera
James
effect.
Wan.
Very James Wan. And listen, if it was Leonetti, good for him, because you could tell that he was pulling from the James Wan bag of tricks, which I don't fault him for.
A lot of horror films, have to try to re-imitate or add upon simple effects and make it even greater.
Yeah, and I listen, at $6.1 million or whatever it is.
They could do it.
You're not using a lot of digital effects. There's nothing wrong with you doing in-camera.
It's very practical.
Practical, and it can work. So, and I think that this movie, I think that it worked in this. Do you want to? We should probably talk a little bit about the cast.
Yes, absolutely. We had, there were a few actual recognizable names. Alfre Woodard.
Alfre Woodard was probably the most name in the movie.
Again, I didn't know she was in this film, so it was a nice surprise to see her. I mean, I was surprised with her character. I mean, it's good that Mia herself got another friend, another companion in this film, because she's alone most of the time. I think Alfre Woodard, she's an amazing actress, Academy Award nominee. She did add more human elements, especially with her backstory and the whole accident with her daughter and feeling responsible to it. This particular scene, when those two women are talking, you knew that was for something. Sure. It was going to build up.
Absolutely.
So was it a surprise to you near the end where her character made the sacrifice herself?
To me, that was actually like, it was a surprise in the fact that I didn't see it coming. It didn't really make much sense to me that it was going to happen. I didn't necessarily like the way that scene played out. I thought it sort of kind of wasted Alfre Woodard and that character, because it just like, it could have played out it could have gone for more scares. Now, whether it was budgetary or whatever, I don't know. I just didn't like the demise of that character and saying, oh, okay, I'm going to sacrifice myself and I'm going to take the doll with me,
redeem myself, and for my daughter to save your daughter, because I couldn't save my own.
Yeah, and I don't know. I didn't buy it.
Yeah, I didn't really buy it either because I felt like it was too simple of a solution to everything
Agreed.
that was going on.
Everything that was agreed.
Too simple.
Agreed.
It's like, okay, yep,
And
I'll do it.
Right.
It's like, you won't, I will. Like,
And
there
was like no emotion to it. And if you're going to off somebody like Alfre Woodard, make it really mean something and make it a little bigger or something.
It was, again, it was just too easy. It's like, I volunteer as tribute. In a way, I mean, seriously. I mean,
yeah, and
it was too simple.
yeah, it was too simple. And she was fine. I mean, she, a name as recognizable as hers sort of kind of gives cachet, to a movie of this type. So, and it could help bring in, Alfre Woodard's in this. Oh, maybe this is a little more serious than I thought.
Well,
she was gonna
exactly, and that's
role.
where I was surprised that Alfre was in this because I feel like she's a great actress. Yes, very well established, amazing career. I felt like this character didn't do anything for her. It doesn't move the needle. It wasn't an Academy Award performance.
No.
Anybody could have done this role. I felt like it was a waste of her professional talent. It didn't challenge her in any acting element.
I don't disagree. Don't disagree at all. And, it was good that she did it.
Great, bring a name to this film.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Sure.
But it was a waste of her amazing talent.
Now, what did you think of our protagonists, our Mia and John Gordon?
Annabelle Wallis. I mean,
Annabelle Wallis.
I haven't really seen a lot of her work.
Same here.
And I was surprised that she is actually from England. And then learning that aspect and knowing that Mia's character is American and to lose her that accent. It was funny, I was doing research and her interviews, her voice is so much lower in her natural voice with her accent. And then when you go back to Mia's character, it's a bit higher and you can definitely tell she had to work on the dialect.
Right. She was fine. I sort of wish they gave the parents a little bit more to do, especially as a couple. Like when, again, I'm going to reference The Conjuring because it's a prequel. You buy their family woes. There is sort of a backstory to that family. There's a reason why, like they got that farm for a good price. But regardless of the fact, it's still going to put them in the weeds. The husband is a truck driver. He's got it. There's a reason for him being on the road and not at home. But they have a full family.
Husband's a doctor.
Oh no, I'm talking about The Conjuring.
Oh, that was
in The Conjuring,
okay,
So there is backstory, and you understand why he can be out of the picture, but he's also the one who's sort of kind of like, he's the one that at first doesn't believe the Warrens. Like, he's the skeptic.
He's the dismissive
right.
one. Yeah.
And that's another thing in a horror movie.
And that's also reflects with the husband in this
the husband in this movie. And again, in a horror movie too, you sort of kind of need the skeptic. Because the skeptic is, in a sense, the audience, okay? And then when shit starts to get real, so to speak, then you turn that skepticism into, oh my, holy shit. Like, when you make the skeptic believe that there's some really bad stuff that's going to go down, that makes the entire process a little bit scarier. However, the one thing that The Conjuring had the Warrens. Okay. And the Warrens are our professionals. This is another thing. I've talked about this before. I always love it when you put professionals into a situation that
it
they
makes
should
it
be
more
able
legit.
Well, it makes it more legit. But when you put professionals into a situation that they're supposed to be able to handle and they realize that they're in way over their heads, that adds for tension. And in this one, we didn't necessarily, the only professional we sort of kind of had was the priest.
Father Perez.
And I like that character. I like that actor.
I liked him. And even the fact that when his character was getting more affected, and then once the husband sees him at the actual hospital, it's like, oh yes, something really is going on, because it's not just affecting my wife at home, it's affecting the priest away from my home. Okay, now I should really pay attention and go home to save my wife.
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
absolutely.
I was kind of upset at that fact. I'm like, be the husband that understands. And
he been there.
He was trying to understand, and because of his job, he wasn't there. But the fact that they had to have another person be affected in order for the husband to do anything about it.
Yeah, I mean, I did felt that the husband sort of kind of took
me.
he sort of kind of took a blasé approach to it. He wasn't there. And that's the one thing in The
Played
Conjuring.
by Ward Horton.
Yeah, and again, I'm not talking about his performance. It's just the way that the character was written.
It was the story. Nothing was written for him.
No. And Tony Amendola, who played Father Perez, and again, he did a great job, but I think I even said it to you. I said, well, when you can't get F. Murray Abraham, you go with this guy. Because to me, I couldn't, I just couldn't get F. Murray Abraham out of my mind looking at this guy. But again, he brings in the religious aspect, which can make this type of a horror movie, especially when you're dealing with the supernatural.
And the demons and the devils and cults, yes. And any religious person who's going to watch this is going to be questioning all that and allow... Because possession has to happen from the actual person. They have to allow devil or any sinister thing enter their lives. They allow that and give that.
And as a priest, I have to say, he sort of kind of seemed to have a little bit of forward thinking going on, because he actually was like, well, no, a demon can possess. And, sometimes like you see some of the movies and Amityville Horror, which is a Warren case, believe it or not. You had Rod Steiger fighting the church because the church is like, we're not taking any part of this. Same thing in like sort of kind of like The Exorcist. The Exorcist, you had Damien Karras, and you had the church like saying, okay, we don't want to believe in this, but we're going to send this person here. But it makes The Exorcist that much creepier, or the Amityville Horror. And in this movie, he believed in it. He wanted to help this family out. He was the loving priest that you see in movies, and he did a fine job, and then he sort of, it was
poor guy gets
creepy.
Affected by the...
Oh my God. And
by
also,
the doll.
That
and
was
he
sort of a
even was...
scene.
There was the moment when his back was turned towards Mia, I believe, and he was affected for a few seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but he wasn't even there. Like, that was a pure haunting, because he was getting his stuff at the church. But the fact that even, again, this was the only other secondary character that was affected. Yeah. And I did feel like that scene where Father Perez was driving to the church and he had the Annabelle doll in the back seat. Like, the way that was filmed.
He put it in the front seat, then moved it to the back. I'm like, not a good idea.
And I will say that the cutting from, because the radio and the music, and it kept on cutting from the road to him, and I thought he was going to get into a car accident. I thought, oh boy, okay, here it comes. They're setting me up that he's going to have his eyes off the road and something's going to happen, but something almost worse happens when he gets to the church and tries to bring the doll into the church.
I will give it to this film with the appearance of the older Annabelle. Every single time she appeared was very creepy, especially in that scene when Father Perez was back at the church and knew something was going to happen, and we did see Annabelle in the car, just staring. Planning on something to happen. Yeah,
and he sees her. That's the other important thing. So he knows. Outside of Mia, he sees the adult Annabelle. Yeah.
And then also the other scene with Annabelle's appearances when Mia is going back to the apartments and the whole carriage going out into the street. Oh, right. She saw Annabelle in the reflection window.
Right.
So Annabelle just appears at all the moments where you know something's going to happen.
Yeah. And again, that's where Leonetti, again, reaching in the James Wan bag of tricks. Again, he made a movie that had some creepy moments. I'm not going to deny him that. And that's why I can't say that the movie made me angry. I wanted more, but there were aspects of it that I was like, oh, okay.
Annabelle the person was actually creepy in itself, because I don't think the audience, as an audience member, I don't think we actually got a full clear shot of her face. Therefore, it would allow the audience, the viewer, to have their own imagination how scary she was.
Yeah, and let's talk about our audience for a second, because our audience was sort of funny. It was
the one that we were in our screening.
The screening that we were in, it was like sort of funny because they gasped and jumped when they were supposed to.
Yep.
But the funniest for me was there were at least two couples sitting directly behind us. Okay, and this was great because throughout the entire movie, this is what I hear. You're squeezing my arm. You're squeezing my arm. Are you scared of me? Oh my God, and then they jump, they scream around. All right, so now the movie ends, and they get up to walk out, and the guys go, That movie wasn't that scary.
That wasn't scary.
That wasn't that scary. Let's
Y'all
go see-
wusses.
Let's go see a real movie. And then the girl goes, shut the F up. She goes, you were squeezing my arm so hard. She goes, I lost circulation.
Yeah, I heard it too, because
I just had to laugh my ass
It
off.
was like at the end of it, he was trying to like literally play it up to the to everybody else in the room. He's like, yeah, I wasn't scared. Yeah,
Scared.
no, that wasn't a scary movie. Y'all wusses.
His exact quote too was, let's go see a real movie.
Yeah.
Like you.
I'm pretty sure I kept my composure better than he did.
I'm so glad that his girlfriend, whoever that was, like just put him in his
called
place.
him out.
It was awesome. But that again,
Fun
that,
viewing
to me,
experience, though.
That's why I love like a good horror movie. To see people like do the horror wave, I call it. If you ever have the chance to see a horror movie and you know the beats of the horror movie, just watch it from the back. And when you know a jump or a scare is going to come, just watch it. Like at a baseball game, everybody goes, woo. You get that. You get the horror wave. You get the heads popping up in the seats. It's pretty cool. And you know that the movie worked. So
that was also me throughout this film, because every time it got completely silent, you knew something was going to happen.
Absolutely.
Again, cheap audio tricks that filmmakers use. There's no silence, and then there's a big loud bang, something scary happens. And every time it got quiet, I just like turned my head, not look at the screen. I knew it was coming. And sure enough, 2 seconds later, there it was. I was like, okay, done.
Yeah.
And it kept building to those moments every single time. Quiet, boom. Quiet, boom.
Yep. It's a common technique, bringing in suspense and
they use it too much.
Sometimes, absolutely. So, and again, that's why today it takes. Like, look, I call you a beginner in horror, but if you're able to
Definitely
recognize
novice.
it, but that means you're graduating, because like if you notice that technique, and some directors use that to like ad nauseum. It's just like you use a sound instead of
They use
actual,
that ad nauseum in this film.
You cheat the scare. You're not crafting a scare. You're just crafting a sound effect that's going to go boom. And if it's not followed up with anything, and that's why again I really do like The Conjuring, Insidious. I think we did Insidious 2 last year.
Yeah, we did.
And that was a scary movie, even at PG-13. I believe it's PG-13.
Yeah.
Scary film. So I don't know. What we can talk about too is a little bit of trivia. Apparently, not only was it $6.1 million to film, 25 days of shooting. They film it in sequence, but apparently they were filming on a haunted set. They were filming in a haunted set, as the director Leonetti and Safran, the producer, they had their own supernatural occurrence happen. Now, the first incident, so they say,
or spooky elements.
We went into the apartment where we were shooting, and then in the transient window above the living room window, it was a full moon, and there were 3 fingers drawn through the dust along the window. And our demon has 3 fingers and 3 talons. The markings were being backlit by the moon. He goes, I have a picture of it. It was sick. Share the picture.
Yeah, I'd like to see this
I want to
photo.
see this picture.
I saw the same interview with him talking about that. I was like, well, post it in the link below.
Or at least put it up in your phone. Like, where's the picture of it,
where's
man?
the proof?
All right. And then Peter Safran, the producer, confirmed haunted hijinks. And he says the second incident was worse. He said, we shot in this amazing old apartment building near Koreatown. We had some funky stuff go on. And this he was telling to the Hollywood Reporter. He says, in particular, the first day the demon was shooting in full makeup, we brought the demon up in the elevator. He walks out and walks around to the green room to where we're holding the talent. And just as he walks under, a giant glass light fixture is being followed by the actor playing the handyman of the building, the janitor. He goes, and all of a sudden, the entire glass light fixture falls down on his head, the janitor's head. He goes, and in the script, the demon kills the janitor in that hallway. He said it was totally freaky. Coincidence or the supernatural?
Or just bad maintenance.
Well, thanks for ruining the creep factor. It was probably bad maintenance, knowing the neighborhood. No offense to that janitor.
Yeah. I mean, fun. I mean, every time you do a horror film, spooky set, you got to have fun stories to tell, from the set.
Yeah, hope.
I think that's fun. That's
Poltergeist has its stories. Unfortunately, Poltergeist has been a cursed production. We can go through all that. But, even filming The Exorcist, there were some creepy things going on that they said were happening during filming of that movie. And that movie is one of the scariest movies of all time.
Yeah, I'm sure every horror film set has their own stories from from the set that I'd love to hear. There was another actual creepy suspenseful element that I thought they added in the film. The coloring pages of those two kids.
Oh, the two kids who, Oh, yeah.
What did we think of this? I mean, I felt like this was such I shouldn't say random, but an interesting element that they added to add the suspense, because not only is Maria still alone, she is dealing with other kids. I thought maybe the adjoining family rooms or families would be a part of this as well.
I'm really glad that you mentioned that, because I would have forgotten to talk about it. But here, my thoughts on that were, it was a great setup that didn't go anywhere. Like, we never saw those kids again.
No, we didn't.
So were they ghosts?
We saw the foreshadowing of the whole carriage crashing into the truck.
Absolutely.
But that was it.
But I'm trying to think because it was, again, very well set up. You remember the scene? She sees the two kids on the steps. They're drawing in crayons. She tries to talk to him, and the little boy's like, "Don't talk to strangers" or whatever. She goes, "Oh, okay, I'll be back." So she leaves. When she comes back from her day of chores, we see a picture upside down. Mm-hmm. Similar sheet of paper, and she picks it up. There's one picture. She goes up the stairs going to her apartment, sees another picture, and as she's walking up. Progression. And it's a story. It's like an animatic. Yeah. Almost.
It is.
And I was wondering, wow, who left these? Maybe these two kids were ghosts. Maybe they were maybe this was a haunting. Maybe they're going to come back. We're going to see this. Maybe they're going to have something to do with the events that they're depicting in these, because as you said, it led up to the fiery cradle or the carriage, the baby carriage going on the street.
Going into the street, yeah.
And to me, it just didn't have the payoff. I was wondering, it made me wonder, are the kids ghosts? Are
they a figment of Mia's imagination? Because she's tired. She's a fairly brand new mother.
But she sees all this. She has physical evidence that something was done.
And there was a moment where even one of the pages was physically thrown down to her. Right. Someone had to purposely place that there. So what was that?
So was it
we never
Annabelle
really got the
we
answer.
Never got the payoff. And I don't even recall, a great payoff to me would have been, had we seen crayons around Annabelle, or had
the red crayons, we also saw even near the end of the film, all the writings on the walls was all from red crayon.
Yeah, but it would have been nice, maybe the doll had red crayon marking on the hand, or maybe there was a red crayon next door. It would have been a good payoff.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that also adds to just the real story of Annabelle with all the messages and red crayon. Yeah. I think that was the only tie-in from that story to this one.
Yeah, and again, you set up a good scare,
for
you didn't pay off.
For nothing.
Didn't pay off, and sometimes that gets frustrating.
Yeah.
So, because
we had to talk about it.
No, I'm glad you brought it up, because I wouldn't have, and that was one of the things that I was thinking of after watching the movie, and it was just good momentum, good build up, but didn't deliver in the scares.
Yeah. Annabelle definitely, the doll itself delivered in scares.
Yeah, sure.
And I think the one moment that really did freak me out, you knew it was going to happen though, when she's looking underneath the door, you knew someone's and you knew someone's going to be looking at her, whether it be the demon or Annabelle, just and of course it's Annabelle, just plops to the floor, and you see her scary eyes looking at you. That for an Annabelle moment was probably the scariest for me.
Yeah, it was a good Annabelle moment, and don't want to come down.
Because it's actually now moving. Yeah. Because every time you see it, it's in a different position.
Somewhere. It falls from somewhere.
But there's motion to it this time.
And it just falls. And it doesn't get up on its own.
No. But it was actually moving.
Yeah. So, all in all, I just think that we are in October. It's good. What I'm most happy is that James Wan was in one way, shape, or one way, shape, or form involved, because this means maybe we'll get a Conjuring sequel. Maybe we'll get another Warrens movie. Now,
well, I believe there's actually The Conjuring 2 coming out.
Yeah, and apparently, from what they say, from what Leonetti and James Wan said, because they were asked, why are the Warrens not in this movie? And I actually have some cool trivia, but
this
the
movie
answer was given,
builds up to the opening sequence of The Conjuring.
Right. And they say that they wanted to have the Warrens in, but scheduling timing for the actors didn't work out. Okay, I'll buy that. But what I thought is sort of kind of cool, that is sort of kind of continuity. Did you know? Okay, so we know that at the beginning of The Conjuring, and actually even at the beginning of Annabelle, we know that the doll ends up into the hands of a nurse.
Yeah, of
right?
the college students who's studying
and one of them is a nurse. Yeah. Well, what I didn't know is, and I didn't catch this in the movie, but when Mia is going through labor, the woman who came to the Warrens with the Annabelle doll is the one that's carrying the newly delivered baby.
Oh.
Sort of cool, right?
Whoa.
Isn't that cool?
Mind blown.
No, I didn't catch that.
No, totally.
But, okay, I get it. Like,
there is the connection
cool.
there.
There's a little continuity going on.
Got it.
But
That's smart.
It's sort of weird that I'm thinking, because this movie took place in Santa Monica.
Yes.
And I think Pasadena.
And they moved it to Pasadena.
And
they did film in Los Angeles.
Yeah, and the Annabelle doll somehow ends up on the East Coast. Mm-hmm. So, it was, to me, the tack-on ending with the woman walking into the collectibles store going, oh, there's the doll. Oh, my daughter's a nurse. She loves to help people. Oh, this will help her. I'd love to give back, or something to that effect. I was like, nah. That little tacked-on ending didn't necessarily work for me, but I do love
I think it worked for me because it made this movie itself come full circle. Mm-hmm, okay. Because at the beginning we say, I got this doll as a gift. I'm studying to be a nurse. And then we had the end where it explains how she got it again. Yeah. Yes, for individually, without The Conjuring, it made this film stand alone.
Yeah. I mean, the movie does stand alone. It doesn't... It's not an open-ended movie, and
no.
So I think it works. I just thought that it was
for
cool.
Being part of what's probably going to be a trilogy. It was very self-contained.
Yeah, it was.
And we've had problems with other films, Maze Runner being one of them. Yeah. Knowing that that's going to be a trilogy. The first film wasn't self-contained, but this one was, even though it was a prequel.
Absolutely. And I'll even go back to James Wan's Insidious, which sort of kind of has an open-ended ending. Like really creepy ending, but I think that was done for effect. The movie itself is still self-contained, and then it's brought up in Insidious 2. It picks up exactly where that one leaves off, and plays through a pretty self-contained story there. There are other stories to tell, from what I understand, but James Wan, kudos to you, James Wan, who was with you from the beginning. What he was able to accomplish, and Saw made his career. Totally did. And what he and Lee Winnell did way back when you talk about little budget, Saw was even less than $6 million.
And look how many films came out after Saw.
So James Wan has turned himself into an accomplished director, so much that Universal felt comfortable to give him the Fast and Furious franchise. And you can only feel sorry for a director who's going in with the drama and tragedy that has taken place during that set. Mm-hmm. But I'm very curious to see, with his in-camera tricks, very curious to see how he makes Fast and Furious go forward. So, I think that, like I said, kudos to him. He's stuck by his good friend John Leonetti. He helped him with this movie. He loves horror. And so, I can't say enough good things about Mr. Wan. And, he helped put Lionsgate on the map for us back in the time. That was a big deal.
Definitely. And more things to look forward to from James Wan. I mean,
sure.
I'm not a horror fan, but I will see his movies.
Yeah, he's good.
I mean, he's the kind of director that is like, yes, I'll go see another horror film.
Yeah, and,
sure.
and like I said, even with Fast and Furious, I'm curious to see how he excels in that kind of a genre.
Yeah.
So, and I think Annabelle, my final thoughts on Annabelle are, it didn't make me angry. It has enough creep moments. I just wish there were more. So a good way to start off Halloween. Go get scared. There are lots more horror movies that are coming out. Of course, I'm commemorating Halloween H2O. I have to put in this plug for H2O. Our good friend John Ottman did the original score to H2O.
Yeah.
And it's in the box set, so it's really cool. Check it out if you don't.
Yeah, and speaking of music, the music itself in this very creepy, composed by Joe Bishara, who also worked on Insidious and The Conjuring.
Yeah, can you bring some of that music? Yeah, the Conjuring music was
Let's end on his music, shall we?
So your final thoughts, Miss Novice, horror movie?
Fun horror. I'm glad that the film started off on a slower note, so me as an audience member could slowly get into it rather than like scare me right off the bat. Overall, very physically, cinematography was great.
Yeah.
And I would recommend this to all the horror fans out there. Go see it.
Well, we had fun watching it.
If you love The Conjuring, you would enjoy Annabelle to add to it. So, yes.
Yeah. And like I said, we had a fun time watching this movie with you. It was equally...
I'm not a horror fan. I keep saying it because I had to practically beg Demetri. I was like, can I go see this with you? I can't see this by myself.
You didn't have to beg. I invited. I was like, come on, you got to see it with us.
I was like, I cannot watch this movie by myself.
Yeah.
So
we were more
fun
than
experience.
Hopefully
Definitely, it was a fun experience.
More movies together again. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely fun.
All right.
Thank you all for listening. You can follow everyone here at Anatomy of a Movie on Twitter at Movie Anatomy. You can follow all of our dissections on our website at anatomyofamovie.com and check us out on YouTube. Rate and comment below. We love listening to all the commenters and all your thoughts and what other horror films you're looking forward to for the 2014 year and other films that this movie compares to. Let us know. We love hearing all of it.
And being it's October, what is your favorite horror movie of all time?
Yeah.
I'll just tell you right off Halloween. Love the original Halloween.
You love Halloween.
It really is.
I love
my
the Scream
favorite
movies. I will say Halloween is when I binge watch all the Scream movies.
Yeah.
So thank you all for listening to our fun dissections. We have more fun dissections coming down the pipeline, and we will see you next time.
See ya.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the rest of the Anatomy of a Movie staff, we would like to thank you for listening and subscribing to the show. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email or tweet us. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been Anatomy of a Movie.